The massive crystal doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep, resonating hum. Elder Kethamaran stepped forward, his ancient crystalline body catching the light from 1,000 different suns that streamed through the dome above. He had lived for over 3,000 years, watching civilizations rise and fall across the galaxy. Today he carried a warning that would change everything. The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Floating platforms held delegates from every corner of known space. Some breathed methane, others required intense heat or crushing cold. The technology that allowed them all to exist in one space was beyond the understanding of most species in the galaxy. At the center of it all sat the High Council. War Chief Vextalar of the Draknari Empire lounged in his massive chair, his scaled hide gleaming with metal implants that marked his countless victories. Beside him, the Zephyrin Prime Intellect Mordain hovered in a sphere of pure energy, his thoughts processing information faster than most computers. "The Ancient One wishes to speak," announced the council speaker. A being so old that no one remembered what species it had originally been. "The floor recognizes Elder Kethamaran of the Velthari." Kethamaran moved forward slowly. Every step sent ripples of light through his crystalline form. The Velthari were among the oldest races in the galaxy, and their wisdom was respected by most. But today he could feel the impatience in the chamber. The council had more important matters to discuss than the ramblings of an ancient being. "Honored members of the council," Kethamaran began, his voice echoing like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I come before you today with a warning. For 3 millennia, my people have watched a small blue planet in the Outer Rim territories. The inhabitants call their world Earth." A ripple of amusement went through the chamber. The Outer Rim was barely explored, home to primitive species that had barely learned to make fire, let alone travel between stars. "These beings call themselves humans," Kethamaran continued. "They are young, having achieved basic civilization only recently. But there is something about them that troubles my people deeply." War Chief Vextalar leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the floor. "Troubles you? A primitive species troubles the mighty Velthari?" His voice was like grinding stone, and several smaller delegates moved away from his platform. "Yes," Kethamaran replied simply, "because they are unlike any species we have ever observed. They do not follow the patterns that govern all other intelligent life." Prime Intellect Mordain's energy sphere pulsed with interest. "Explain these patterns you claim they violate." Kethamaran's form brightened as he gathered his thoughts. "All species follow certain rules. When faced with superior force, they surrender or flee. When presented with impossible odds, they accept defeat. When their environment becomes hostile, they adapt slowly or perish. Humans do none of these things." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then, laughter began to ripple through the assembled delegates. It started small, but grew until the entire chamber echoed with the sound of 100 different species finding humor in the old crystal being's words. "They wage war against themselves," Kethamaran continued, his voice rising above the laughter, "not for resources or territory, but to become stronger. They deliberately place themselves in mortal danger for what they call fun. They climb mountains that could kill them, dive into crushing ocean depths, and throw themselves from great heights with only fabric to slow their fall." War Chief Vextalar's laughter was loudest of all. "So they are simply insane. Madness is not uncommon among primitive species. They will destroy themselves long before they become a threat to anyone." "No," Kethamaran said firmly, "you do not understand. They do these things not because they are mad, but because they refuse to accept that anything is impossible. When told something cannot be done, they take it as a challenge." Prime Intellect Mordain's sphere dimmed slightly. "Our analysis indicates that species exhibiting such chaotic neural patterns typically collapse within a few centuries. Their internal conflicts consume them." "That is what we thought as well," Kethamaran admitted. "But we have watched them for 3,000 years. They have not collapsed. Instead, they grow stronger with each conflict. Each war teaches them new ways to fight. Each disaster shows them how to survive worse catastrophes." The laughter in the chamber began to fade as delegates started to listen more carefully. The Velthari were known for their careful observations and accurate predictions. They had warned of the fall of the Kronax Empire and the rise of the Zephyrin Collective centuries before either event occurred. In the past century alone, Kethamaran continued, they have progressed from using chemical weapons to splitting the atom. They have gone from primitive flying machines to placing their own kind on their planet's moon. This rate of advancement is unprecedented in galactic history. Impossible, scoffed a delegate from the Rigel system. No species advances that quickly without outside intervention. They had no outside intervention, Kethmoran replied. They did it all themselves, and the most disturbing part is how they did it. They tested their nuclear weapons on their own planet. They sent their people into space knowing many would die. They approach every problem as if failure is not an option. War Chief Vextaller stood up, his massive form towering over the other delegates. Even if what you say is true, they are one small planet in the outer rim. The Draknari Empire alone controls 1,000 worlds. What threat could they possibly pose? Kethmoran's crystalline form pulsed with a deep warning light. Because they are not content to stay on one world. Even now, they are developing the technology to travel between stars. And when they do, they will bring with them something we have never encountered before. Which is? Prime Intellect Mordain asked, his sphere now completely focused on the Elder. The absolute refusal to accept defeat, Kethmoran replied. Every other species in the galaxy knows when to surrender. Humans do not have this knowledge. They will fight when fighting is hopeless. They will continue when continuation is impossible. They will find a way when no way exists. The chamber was completely silent now. The weight of the Elder's words settled over the assembled delegates like a heavy blanket. I have come here today to warn you, Kethmoran said, his voice carrying the authority of 3 millennia of wisdom. Make contact with this species carefully. Do not threaten them. Do not attempt to conquer them, because if you do, you will discover something that will shake the very foundations of our galactic civilization. And what is that? War Chief Vextaller asked, his voice no longer mocking. Kethmoran's form blazed with brilliant light as he delivered his final warning. You will discover that there are beings in this universe who would rather die fighting than live in chains, and that such beings cannot be stopped by conventional means. The Elder turned and began walking toward the exit. Mark this day, Honored Council. You have been warned about humanity. What you do with this warning will determine the future of us all. As the crystal doors closed behind him, the chamber erupted in debate. But already, War Chief Vextalar and Prime Intellect Mordain were exchanging glances that spoke of their shared thought, the ramblings of an ancient fool. They would remember this day differently when the humans finally came. Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, watching the stars streak past through the viewport. It had been 50 years since Elder Kethmoran's warning to the Galactic Council, though humans knew nothing of that meeting. They had finally cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel, and this was humanity's first voyage beyond their home system. Captain, called out Navigation Officer Yoon Daeho from his station, we're approaching the coordinates for our first survey point. Dropping out of FTL in 30 seconds. Lee nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. The Resilience was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel, built for discovery and peaceful contact with whatever they might find out here among the stars. The crew of 200 had volunteered for a mission that would take them farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. All stations report ready. Captain, announced First Officer Kim Nari. She was the ship's xenobiologist, chosen for her expertise in theoretical alien life forms. Like everyone else on the ship, she was excited about the possibility of first contact with an alien civilization. The stars suddenly stopped moving as the Resilience dropped back into normal space. Through the viewport, they could see a massive gas giant with rings of ice and rock. Their sensors immediately began scanning the system for signs of life or technology. Captain, I'm picking up multiple energy signatures, reported Sensor Officer Lim Tae-jun. His voice carried a note of excitement. Artificial signatures. There are ships out there. Before Lee could respond, the communications board lit up with activity. Communications Officer Shin Minky quickly worked to decode the incoming transmission. Captain, they're hailing us, Minky announced. The signal is being translated by our computers, but it's definitely intelligent. Put it through, Lee ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a reptilian face covered in scales and metal implants. Cold yellow eyes stared at them with obvious contempt. When the being spoke, its voice was harsh and grating. Unknown vessel, you are trespassing in Draknari space. Identify yourself immediately. Lee stepped forward, straightening his uniform. I am Captain Lee Hyun of the United Earthship Resilience. We are explorers from the planet Earth, seeking peaceful contact with other intelligent species. The alien's expression changed to one of cruel amusement. Earth? Never heard of it. I am Commander Gorthek of the Draknari Imperial Fleet. You will surrender your vessel immediately and provide the coordinates to your homeworld. I'm afraid I cannot do that, Lee replied calmly. We come in peace, but we will not surrender our ship or endanger our people. Gorthek's laughter was like the sound of grinding metal. You misunderstand your situation, Primitive. Your small vessel is surrounded by 6 Draknari warships. Each one carries enough firepower to turn your ship into cosmic dust. Surrender now and your death will be quick. On the bridge, the crew exchanged glances. Through the viewport, they could see the alien ships moving into attack positions. Each one was twice the size of the Resilience and bristling with weapons. Sir, whispered First Officer Kim Nari, our scans show their weapons are far more advanced than ours. If we fight, we'll lose. Lee looked at his crew. These were the best and brightest humanity had to offer. Scientists, explorers, and peacekeepers who had volunteered to venture into the unknown, but they were also human, and humans had never been good at accepting hopeless odds. Commander Gorthek, Lee said, turning back to the screen. I repeat, we will not surrender. If you wish to take our ship, you are welcome to try. The alien commander's expression shifted to one of disbelief. You dare threaten me? A primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel dares to defy the Draknari Empire. We're not threatening anyone, Lee replied. We're simply stating a fact. This ship and its crew will not surrender. Gorthek snarled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Then you will die. All ships open fire. The Draknari ships unleashed their weapons. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the Resilience. The ship's shields flared as they absorbed the initial impact. But everyone knew they wouldn't last long against such firepower. Damage report. Lee called out as the ship shook around them. Shields at 60% and falling, reported Engineering Chief Park Sung from his station. Hull integrity holding, but we're taking serious damage. Return fire, Lee ordered. All weapons. The Resilience's limited weapons systems came online. They fired back at the Draknari ships, but their weapons barely scratched the alien vessel's shields. Sir, this isn't working, Kim Nari said urgently. We need to retreat. No, Lee said firmly. We retreat and they follow us back to Earth. Humanity's first contact with aliens cannot be our surrender. Park Sung looked up from his console. Captain, I have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work. Let's hear it. Our cargo bay is full of mining equipment for the survey mission. If we vent the bay and use our engines to accelerate the contents, we can turn our supplies into kinetic weapons. Lee nodded. Do it. Park Sung's fingers flew over his controls. The cargo bay doors opened and mining drills, excavation equipment, and metal containers poured out into space. The ship's engines fired, accelerating the improvised projectiles toward the nearest Draknari vessel. Commander Gorthek watched in amazement as chunks of metal and machinery slammed into his flagship's shields. The shields held, but the unexpected attack caused his ship to stagger. What are they doing? Demanded his tactical officer. They're fighting with mining equipment, Gorthek replied, his voice filled with disbelief. On the Resilience, Medical Officer Dr. Choi Rina coordinated damage control teams while treating wounded crew members. When a plasma conduit exploded near her medical bay, she grabbed a fire extinguisher and put out the flames herself before returning to her patients. Captain, she called over the comm system. We have 14 wounded, but everyone is still at their posts. They refused to be relieved. The battle continued for 20 minutes. The Resilience took terrible damage, but the crew kept fighting. When their main weapons failed, they used emergency thrusters to ram an enemy ship. When their shields collapsed, they used the ship's hull as armor and kept firing. Engineer Park Sung rerouted power from life support to weapons. We've got maybe 10 minutes of air left, but our guns are back online. Communications Officer Shin Minky used the ship's transmitter array as an improvised weapon, overloading it to create an electromagnetic pulse that disabled one of the attacking ships. Navigator Yoon Daeho plotted an attack course that took them through an asteroid field, using the rocks as cover and additional weapons. Commander Gorthek found himself facing something he had never encountered before, an enemy that fought harder as the situation became more hopeless. His tactical computers could not calculate the humans' actions because they defied all known military logic. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we've lost 2 ships. A third is heavily damaged. How is that possible? Gorthek demanded. They're primitives with 1 small ship. They're fighting like they don't care if they die, the officer replied. Every time we damage them, they use the damage as a weapon. Finally, with their ship crippled and systems failing, Captain Lee made a decision that would echo through the galaxy. All hands, prepare for ramming speed, he announced. The battered Resilience turned toward Gorthek's flagship and accelerated. The alien commander watched in horror as the human ship approached on a collision course. They're going to ram us, his pilot reported. Should we fire? No, Gorthek said quietly. Let them come. At the last second, the Resilience veered away, but not before launching every remaining piece of equipment, including their escape pods, at the Draknari flagship. The impacts disabled the ship's main engines. This is Captain Lee Hyun, came the transmission from the crippled human ship. We are withdrawing from this system. But remember this day, Commander. You attacked peaceful explorers and we made you pay for it. If you follow us, we will make you pay even more. The Resilience limped away into FTL, leaving behind 2 destroyed Draknari ships and a very confused commander. Gorthek stared at the empty space where the human ship had been. In 30 years of service, he had never seen anything like it. The humans had been outgunned, outnumbered, and facing certain death. But they had fought anyway, and they had hurt his fleet badly. When he reported the encounter to his superiors, they dismissed it as the result of his own incompetence. But Gorthek knew better. He had seen something that day that chilled him to his bones. He had seen humans fight. 10 years had passed since Captain Lee Hyun's first contact with the Draknari. Now human ships could be found in dozens of star systems across the galaxy. They had spread faster than any species in recorded galactic history. And they were doing it in ways that made other civilizations nervous. On the frozen world of Kepler 438b, Colonial Administrator Yoon Ji-won stood in the observation deck of Mining Station 7, watching her workers extract rare minerals from the planet's surface. The temperature outside was minus 40 degrees Celsius, and the atmosphere was filled with toxic gases that would kill most alien species in minutes. Ma'am, the Zephyrin observers are here for their monthly inspection, announced her assistant Park Jimin. Yoon Ji-won nodded. Send them to conference room 3. I'll be there in a moment. She took one last look at the mining operation below. Human workers in environmental suits were operating heavy machinery in conditions that the Zephyrin Collective had declared unsuitable for intelligent life. But humans were producing 3 times more resources than Zephyrin projections had said was possible. The secret was simple. Humans were willing to work in places where other species wouldn't dare to go. In the conference room, 3 Zephyrin analysts waited. Their energy forms flickered with confusion as they reviewed the mining reports. Administrator Yoon, said the lead analyst Velthara, these production figures cannot be accurate. No species can extract resources at this rate under these conditions. The figures are correct, Yoon replied, sitting down across from them. Would you like to see the operation for yourselves? That is unnecessary, Velthara replied quickly. The Zephyrins found the planet's conditions deeply uncomfortable. We are more interested in understanding your methods. Our calculations suggest that workers operating in such an environment should suffer significant casualty rates. Yoon smiled. Our workers volunteer for these assignments. They consider it a challenge. The Zephyrin analysts exchanged confused signals. The concept of voluntarily working in dangerous conditions for personal satisfaction was alien to them. Meanwhile, on the research station orbiting the star Vega, Dr. Ryu Minho was conducting experiments that would have horrified most galactic civilizations. He was testing quantum field manipulators on himself, using his own body to understand how the devices affected living tissue. Computer. Record test number 47, he said, activating a device attached to his arm. Subject experiencing temporal displacement of approximately 0.3 seconds. Cellular damage minimal. Moving to higher energy levels. His research assistant, Dr. Song Haeun, watched nervously from behind a protective barrier. Sir, shouldn't we test this on simulated tissue first? Simulated tissue won't tell us how it affects human consciousness, Ryu replied, adjusting the device's settings. Besides, if something goes wrong, I'm the only one who gets hurt. His work was advancing human understanding of quantum mechanics by decades, but he was doing it by violating every safety protocol that had been established by thousands of years of galactic scientific tradition. Other species tested new technologies carefully over generations. Humans tested them on themselves and learned from the results. In the diplomatic stations throughout the galaxy, trade negotiator Kim Soo-jin was building something that worried the major powers, a network of human allies. She sat across from Ambassador Kethanol of the Altarian Republic, a minor species that controlled 3 star systems on the edge of Dreknari space. "We can offer you protection," Kim said, her voice warm and friendly. "Our defense fleet can be here within a week if the Dreknari threaten your worlds." Kethanol's tentacles writhed nervously. "The Dreknari Empire demands tribute from all species in this region. They have done so for centuries. What makes you think you can protect us from them?" Kim smiled. "Because we don't pay tribute to anyone. And we don't let our friends pay tribute either." "But you are so few," Kethanol protested. "Your entire species controls perhaps 50 worlds. The Dreknari control thousands. Numbers aren't everything," Kim replied. "Would you like to see our proposal for a mutual defense treaty?" The treaty she offered was generous. Human technology, human protection, and human expertise in exchange for resources and strategic locations. But Kethanol could see the deeper strategy. Humans were building a coalition of smaller species, creating a buffer between themselves and the major galactic powers. Within months, a dozen minor species had signed similar treaties. The humans called it making friends. The major powers called it building an empire. On Earth itself, Fleet Admiral Lee Hyun reviewed reports from across human space. The former captain of the Resilience had been promoted after his successful first contact mission, and now he commanded humanity's growing interstellar fleet. "Admiral," said his aide, Lieutenant Commander Cho Yujin, "we're receiving concerning reports from our border regions. Dreknari patrols have been probing our defenses." Lee studied the tactical displays. "They're testing us, trying to see how we respond to pressure. Should we reinforce our border fleets?" "No," Lee said after a moment. "Send a message to all our colonial commanders. If the Dreknari want to test human resolve, let them. But make sure they understand the cost." That message would prove prophetic. Within weeks, Dreknari probe attacks began hitting human outposts. But instead of retreating or negotiating, humans did something unexpected. They fought back harder with each attack. On the mining world of New Incheon, when Dreknari raiders attacked the orbital station, Station Commander Bang Hyunwoo didn't evacuate. Instead, he armed the civilian workers and turned the station into a fortress. When the raiders finally took the station, they found that the humans had booby-trapped everything. The Dreknari lost more ships taking the station than they would have lost attacking a military base. On the agricultural world of New Busan, when Dreknari ground forces landed to seize food supplies, Colonial Governor An Yoonji organized the farmers into guerrilla units. The Dreknari found themselves fighting an enemy that knew every hill, every forest, and every building. Worse, the humans fought like they had nothing to lose. The reports reaching the Galactic Council were confusing and alarming. Humans were expanding too fast, advancing too quickly, and fighting too fiercely. Their behavior didn't match any known patterns for intelligent species. In the crystal halls of the Velthari homeworld, Elder Kethmaran received a visit from younger members of his species. "Elder," said Velthara Nethmion, "the Council has requested our updated analysis of the human expansion." Kethmaran's crystalline form dimmed slightly. "And what does our analysis show?" "What you predicted 60 years ago. They are spreading faster than any species in galactic history. Their technology is advancing through methods we do not understand, and their psychological profile suggests they view conflict as a form of problem-solving. The Council will want to know what we recommend," Kethmoran said. Nethmion hesitated. "The data suggests that humanity represents a fundamental threat to galactic stability. Their expansion rate is exponential. If left unchecked, they will become the dominant species within 2 centuries. And the Council's likely response? They will attempt to contain or eliminate the human threat." Kethmoran's form blazed with sudden light. "Then they have learned nothing from my warning. They still do not understand what humanity truly is." "What are they, Elder?" "They are evolution's answer to stagnation," Kethmoran replied. "For millennia, the galaxy has been ruled by species that learn to avoid risk, to accept limitations, to find comfort in the status quo. Humans are the opposite. They see limitations as challenges and risk as opportunity. But surely the combined might of the galaxy could stop them." Kethmoran was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what happens when you corner a human? They surrender? No, the elder said quietly. They become dangerous. As reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy, one fact became increasingly clear. Humanity was not slowing down. If anything, resistance seemed to make them stronger. Every attack made them more determined. Every setback taught them new lessons. Every enemy made them more creative. The galaxy was about to learn that some species could not be controlled, contained, or conquered. They were about to discover what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. The humans were coming, and they had no intention of asking permission. The Draknari Empire had finally had enough. 3 of their frontier worlds had declared independence and requested human protection. For War Chief Vex Talar, this was an insult that could not be tolerated. He assembled the largest fleet in Draknari history. 500 warships carrying 2 million soldiers, all aimed at crushing this human insolence once and for all. Admiral Tekmor commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was a veteran of dozens of campaigns and had never lost a battle. As his ships dropped out of FTL near the rebel world of Kepler 442c, he expected to see a few human vessels fleeing in terror. Instead, he found Captain Yang Xiojin waiting for him. Yang commanded a task force of 30 human ships, defending the 3 rebel worlds. His flagship, the UES Indomitable, was 1/10 the size of the Eternal Conquest. Any sane commander would have retreated immediately. Yang was not any commander. Draknari fleet, Yang broadcast on all frequencies. You are violating the sovereignty of free worlds under human protection. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences. Admiral Thekmor could hardly believe what he was hearing. Human commander, you are outnumbered 16-1. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. Admiral, Yang replied calmly, you seem to be confused about something. We're not outnumbered. You're just overcrowded. The response made no sense to Thekmor. How could 30 ships claim to be a match for 500? But as his sensors analyzed the human formation, he began to understand that something was very wrong. The human ships were moving in patterns that should have been impossible. They were pulling maneuvers that would crush their crews under gravitational forces. They were accelerating and turning at rates that would kill most known species. Sir, reported his tactical officer, the human ships are operating beyond safe parameters. Their crews should be dead. Then why aren't they? Thekmor demanded. The answer came when the battle began. The human ship struck like lightning, hitting the Draknari formation from 3 directions at once. They moved like fighters instead of capital ships, dancing between the larger Draknari vessels and striking at weak points. Captain Yang's voice echoed across the comm channels. All ships, remember your training. Fast, hard, and make them pay for every meter. The UES Indomitable dove straight through the center of the Draknari formation, its weapons firing constantly. Enemy fire hammered its shields, but Yang kept his ship on course, targeting the command vessels. Captain, called his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Park Dojin, we're taking heavy damage, shields down to 30%. Good, Yang replied. That means we're close enough to hurt them. Target their engine clusters. On the UES Perseverance, Captain Kim Minji was leading her ship through an asteroid field, using the rocks as cover. When Draknari fighters pursued her, she did something that made their pilots question their sanity. She flew directly at the largest asteroid she could find. Captain, you're going to hit it, shouted her navigator. That's the plan, Kim replied, firing her forward weapons at the asteroid just before impact. The explosion shattered the rock into thousands of fragments, each one becoming a high-velocity projectile. The pursuing Draknari fighters flew directly into the debris field and were torn apart. Aboard the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Thekmor watched his fleet's formation dissolve into chaos. The humans were fighting like they were insane, taking risks that would destroy any sane military force. But somehow it was working. Sir, we've lost 12 ships already, his communications officer reported. The humans are targeting our command vessels specifically. How are they moving so fast? Thekmor demanded. Their ships should be scrap metal by now. The answer came from his science officer. Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational compensation systems in their ships. They're using technology we've never seen before to protect their crews from the acceleration forces. What the science officer didn't understand was that the technology was only part of the answer. The other part was that humans had trained for exactly this kind of combat. They had practiced high-G maneuvers until their bodies could handle forces that would kill other species. They had turned their own biological limitations into weapons. On the surface of Kepler 442c, Staff Sergeant Ominje was preparing his Marines for the ground assault that would inevitably come. When Draknari dropships broke through the orbital battle, he was ready for them. "Listen up, Marines," he called to his squad. "These lizards think they can take our world. Let's show them what humans do to uninvited guests." The Draknari landing was a disaster from the moment it began. They expected to face scattered resistance from poorly armed colonists. Instead, they found themselves fighting military units that had turned the entire planet into a fortress. Sergeant O's squad hit the first landing zone with weapons that shouldn't have existed. The humans had somehow turned mining equipment into military hardware. Industrial lasers became anti-aircraft guns. Construction vehicles became assault platforms. When O's position was overrun and he lost his left arm to enemy fire, he didn't retreat. He picked up his severed arm, used it to trigger a grenade, and threw both at the advancing Draknari soldiers. "Sir, are you insane?" shouted Private Nam Hyuk Jin. "Probably," O replied, picking up a fallen enemy weapon with his remaining arm. "But they invaded our world. That makes them more insane than us." The ground battle became a nightmare for the Draknari. Every building was booby-trapped. Every street was a kill zone. The humans fought from positions that should have been impossible to defend, and retreated to positions that should have been impossible to reach. Worse, the humans seemed to get more dangerous as they took casualties. When Draknari forces captured the Planetary Communications Center, they found that the humans had rigged it to explode. The explosion took out 2 city blocks and a full regiment of Draknari soldiers. In space, the naval battle was going even worse for the Draknari. Captain Yang had managed to ram his ship into the engine section of a Draknari dreadnought, crippling both vessels. But instead of going down with his ship, he had ordered his crew to evacuate in escape pods and then triggered the ship's self-destruct sequence inside the enemy vessel. The explosion tore the Draknari dreadnought in half. "Sir," Yang's tactical officer reported from the escape pod, "the Indomitable is gone, but we took their flagship with us." "Good trade," Yang replied. "Signal the Perseverance. Captain Kim has command now." The battle raged for 18 hours. When it was over, the Draknari had achieved their objective. They controlled the 3 rebel worlds. But the cost had been devastating. Of the 500 ships that had entered the system, only 200 limped away. Nearly half of the ground forces were dead or wounded. Admiral Thekmore sat in his damaged command chair, staring at the casualty reports. In a single day, the humans had destroyed more Draknari military power than any enemy in the Empire's history. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human escape pods." "Put it through." Captain Yang's battered face appeared on the screen. "Admiral Thekmore, I hope you're satisfied with your victory. You control these worlds now. But look around at what it cost you." Thekmore said nothing. "Every human you killed had family, friends, and comrades who will remember this day." Yang continued. "You wanted these worlds? You can have them. But you'll have to garrison them with troops who know that humans will come back. And when we do, we'll remember what you did here." The transmission ended. As the Draknari fleet retreated, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The humans had lost, but they had made their enemies pay such a terrible price that victory felt like defeat. In the halls of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called. The reports from Kepler 442c were impossible to believe. How could 30 ships destroy 300? How could colonial militia fight professional soldiers to a standstill? Elder Kethmoran watched the debates with growing alarm. The council was finally beginning to understand the human threat, but they were drawing all the wrong conclusions. "We must crush them before they grow stronger," War Chief Vextaler declared. "This battle proves that humans cannot be reasoned with." "Agreed," said Prime Intellect Mordain. "Their psychological profile indicates they view warfare as a problem-solving mechanism. They will never stop expanding unless they are stopped. Kethmoran stepped forward. Honored Council, you are making a terrible mistake. This battle should teach you that humans cannot be defeated by conventional means. One battle does not make them invincible. Vextala replied. We will gather the full strength of the galaxy and crush them properly. And what will you do? Kethmoran asked quietly. When you discover that fighting humans only makes them more dangerous? The Council ignored his warning. They had already made up their minds. Humanity had to be stopped. The galaxy was about to learn the difference between defeating humans and stopping them. The Galactic Council's decision was unanimous. Humanity had to be eliminated completely before they could spread their dangerous ideas to other species. Operation Cleansing Star was the largest military campaign in galactic history, bringing together fleets from 12 major civilizations, 10,000 warships, 100 million soldiers, and the combined technological might of an entire galaxy focused on one goal, the total extinction of the human race. Elder Kethmoran's warnings had finally been remembered, but it was too late for wisdom. The Council wanted humanity destroyed, and they were willing to commit genocide to achieve it. Fleet Admiral Li Hyun stood in the command center on Luna Base, watching as enemy fleets assembled at the edge of human space. The former captain of the Resilience had spent years preparing for this moment. He knew it would come eventually. Humans had pushed too hard, expanded too fast, and refused to bow to galactic authority. Now they would pay the price. Admiral, reported Intelligence Officer Kang Yujin, our scouts confirm enemy fleet strength. 10,000 ships minimum? They're not taking any chances this time. Lee nodded grimly. How many ships do we have? 800 combat vessels, sir. Plus civilian ships that can be armed. The odds were hopeless, 12 to 1 against. Facing the combined might of civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, any reasonable species would surrender or flee to the outer rim. Humans were not reasonable. Signal all commands, Lee ordered. Operation Mankind's Defiance is now in effect. Every human world becomes a fortress. Every human ship becomes a weapon. Every human citizen becomes a soldier. Across human space, the response was immediate. On New Sol, Mayor An Yunji didn't evacuate the civilian population. Instead, she organized them into defense units. School teachers became demolitions experts. Office workers became snipers. Children too young to fight were sent to hidden bunkers with instructions to remember everything they saw. Why aren't we evacuating the civilians? Asked her deputy counselor Kim Ji-hoon. Because there's nowhere to run, An replied, watching civilians practice with improvised weapons. And because humans don't abandon their homes. If they want our world, they'll have to take it from us building by building. On the industrial world of Titan's Rest, factory supervisor Bang Hyunwoo faced a different problem. The Zephyrin Collective was sending a massive fleet to capture the planet's manufacturing facilities. They wanted the factories intact so they could use human technology for themselves. Bang looked out at the orbital manufacturing platforms that surrounded the planet. Hundreds of facilities that could produce everything from starships to weapons. The aliens wanted to capture them. Bang had other plans. Sir, called his assistant production manager Lee Soo-jin, the evacuation ships are ready. We can get most of the workers off planet before the enemy arrives. No evacuation, Bang replied. Signal all platforms. We're implementing Protocol Scorched Earth. Sir, that will destroy everything we've built here. Exactly, Bang said. If we can't have it, nobody can. And if they want our technology, they can pick through the wreckage. When the Zephyrin fleet arrived at Titan's Rest, they found the orbital platforms had been converted into kinetic weapons. Bang didn't just destroy the factories. He launched them at the enemy fleet. Massive industrial structures accelerated to incredible speeds, smashed into the Zephyrin ships like hammers. The aliens had come to capture valuable facilities. Instead, they found themselves fighting debris clouds that had once been entire manufacturing complexes. Bang's sacrifice destroyed a third of their fleet before they could even land troops. On Earth itself, the situation was most desperate. 3 separate alien fleets converged on humanity's homeworld, intent on ending human resistance once and for all. Admiral Lee had one chance to save his species, and it required a decision that would horrify any sane military commander. Admiral, reported his aide, Commander Cho Yujin, the evacuation fleets are ready. We can get 2 billion people off planet before the enemy arrives. Lee stared at the tactical display showing enemy ships approaching Earth. And leave our homeworld to be conquered? No, signal the evacuation fleets. They're not evacuation ships anymore. They're the attack fleet. Sir, those are civilian vessels carrying families and children. Those are human vessels carrying human crews, Lee corrected. And humans fight with whatever they have. Protocol Omega was the most desperate plan ever conceived by a military commander. Instead of evacuating Earth's population, Lee turned the evacuation into a massive decoy operation. While enemy fleets focused on the fleeing civilian ships, he prepared to use Earth's moon as the largest kinetic weapon in human history. Dr. Kang Yujin, now leading the refugee scientists, worked frantically in hidden laboratories across the solar system. Her Project Lazarus was humanity's insurance policy against extinction, technology that could download human consciousness into cloned bodies. Doctor, called her assistant. Research Director Park Minho, the backup servers are online. We can preserve the memories and personalities of the entire human race. How long will it take to grow new bodies? Kang asked. 6 months for full maturation. But we can accelerate the process if necessary. Kang nodded. Do it. If they kill every human body in the galaxy, we'll just grow new ones and come back. The psychological warfare expert Nam Do-hyun was fighting a different kind of battle. From hidden transmitters across human space, he broadcast stories of human resistance to every alien world in the galaxy. His tales of ordinary humans fighting impossible odds were spreading faster than any military advance. People of the galaxy, Nam's voice echoed across 1,000 worlds. Hear the story of teacher Shin Ariam, who taught school children to build explosives from cleaning supplies. When the Draknari occupied her world, she turned her classroom into a resistance cell. Her students, armed with nothing but knowledge and determination, drove off soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds. The stories were having an unexpected effect. Minor species throughout the galaxy were beginning to question why they accepted domination by the major powers. If humans could fight back against impossible odds, why couldn't they? On dozens of worlds, uprisings began. The Galactic Council found themselves fighting not just humans, but the dangerous idea that authority had to be earned, not inherited. The first major battle came at the Kepler 442 system, where Captain Yang had made his heroic stand months earlier. The aliens returned with overwhelming force to finish what they had started. They found something they didn't expect. Humans who had learned from their previous defeat. Commander Kim Minji led the defense with tactics that seemed to border on insanity. Her ships used gravitational slings to achieve velocities that should have turned their crews into paste. When alien boarding parties breached human vessels, they encountered soldiers who kept fighting after losing limbs. Staff Sergeant Oh Min-jae, now equipped with a cybernetic arm, led boarding parties of his own. His Marines fought their way into alien ships using weapons that violated every known law of warfare. When conventional explosives weren't enough, they used improvised chemical weapons. When those failed, they resorted to hand-to-hand combat with tools designed for ship maintenance. Sergeant called Private Nam Hyukjin over the comm. They're asking for surrender terms. Tell them we don't accept surrender, Oh replied, cutting through an alien bulkhead with a plasma torch. They invaded our space. They don't get to quit just because it's harder than they thought. The battle raged for weeks. The aliens won every engagement, but the cost was devastating. For every human ship destroyed, they lost 3 of their own. For every human world conquered, they lost 12 ships and thousands of soldiers. Worse, the humans seemed to get more dangerous as they took losses. Every defeat taught them new tactics. Every casualty made the survivors more determined. On Earth, Admiral Lee watched the reports with grim satisfaction. They're winning, he told Commander Cho, but they're bleeding themselves white doing it. Sir, at this rate, they'll have destroyed our entire military within 6 months. Good, Lee replied, because that's when Phase 2 begins. Phase 2 was Project Lazarus. As human bodies died throughout the galaxy, their minds were being preserved in quantum storage systems. But Dr. Kang had made a crucial modification to the process. The new bodies wouldn't just have the memories of the original humans. They would have enhanced physical capabilities and resistance to the weapons being used against them. We're not just backing up human consciousness, she explained to her team. We're upgrading it. The galaxy was about to learn that killing humans was not the same as stopping them. They were about to discover that some species could come back from extinction stronger than before, and they were about to understand why Elder Kethmoran had warned them so urgently, so many years ago. The humans were about to prove that death itself was just another obstacle to overcome,